This week on MCrider, let's talk about thresholds. So when it comes to motorcycles, cornering, accelerating, and braking, there are thresholds, or that point in your traction where if it's exceeded just a little bit more is going to cause you to lose traction. So this week, let's talk about thresholds. MotoGP is one of my favorite sports. Just about every year, with the exception of 1 year, I've taken a trip to Austin, Texas to watch the MotoGP races at the Circuit of Americas. Riders at this level brake, accelerate, and corner right at the threshold of traction that their tires can withstand. On the track, the goal is to push the limits of the threshold so that they can make laps as fast as possible. For us on the street, our goal with acceleration, braking, and cornering is to always keep some traction in reserve when we need it for the unexpecteds. So some of the unexpected you might find out there: car pulling out in front of you, a dog running into the street, gravel in the corner, or maybe a corner that's sharper than you thought it was going to be. So if I corner right at the threshold of traction around a corner on the street and I run into gravel or sand in that corner, I'm likely to crash. But if I leave lean angle, path of travel, and cornering traction in reserve, then I've got a reserve so that I can make up the difference and continue on through that corner without incident. There are all kinds of things that go into determining what the threshold of traction is for your motorcycle. Your skill level, the types of tires that you ride, how sticky they are, the air pressure in your tires, the condition of the pavement, the lean angle, the temperature of the road surface has something to do with it. So there are a lot of different factors that contribute to when your tire is actually going to break loose and slide on the pavement. But let's look at two things that we can hang our hat on that's always going to be true when it comes to threshold braking, accelerating, and cornering. First thing is, unless you're a really elite rider, our threshold, or the traction we have available, is almost always greater than we think it would be. So if I'm going through a corner and I realize halfway through that corner that it's a decreasing radius and it's getting sharper, if I don't panic in that situation and do something to make it worse, like target fixating or grabbing the brakes or chopping the throttle, any of those mistakes that we could make mid-corner. But if I don't panic and I lean the motorcycle further through that corner, the tire has got more traction available than I tend to think that it does. And in most cases, if we don't make the situation worse, we can get more traction out of that tire than we think is possible. The second truth is that threshold, or your traction of the tire, is much greater if it's approached in a smooth manner. So what do I mean by that, by approaching the threshold in a smooth manner? Well, let's say I'm riding down the road and a deer runs out in front of me. My natural reaction with that brake hand is to reach out and grab the front brake, and it's going to cause that tire to lock up very quickly because of the abrupt force put on the tire. The tire is going to lock up and you're going to go down. Same exact situation, same exact scenario, motorcycle, everything. Deer runs out in front of me. I reach out with that brake hand and I progressively squeeze on that front brake, slowly applying more pressure as I'm using the rear brake. That threshold is going to move further out and I'm going to have more traction, more braking power available because I'm approaching the threshold in a smooth manner. Motorcycle tires can take an incredible load and still maintain their traction as long as we're smooth at approaching that threshold. What they're not good at is taking an abrupt load. So if my reflexes cause me to reach out and grab that front brake, I'm going to exceed that threshold very quickly because I'm not being smooth on the motorcycle. So now that we've talked about threshold and how we can approach threshold on a motorcycle and maintain control of a motorcycle, How do we begin to work on that so that we can increase our thresholds while we're out riding? Most single vehicle motorcycle accidents happen in corners, and it's because of motorcyclists' inability to get around corners smoothly and efficiently cause a lot of accidents. To me, the best place that you can train for cornering is in a track day. Being on a controlled environment on a motorcycle where you don't have to worry about cars pulling out in front of you, you can learn a lot in a single day just by getting out on a track and exploring the boundaries or pushing the limits a little bit on a motorcycle that you wouldn't be able to otherwise. Another really good training option is a total control class. I'll leave a link to total control training down in the description of this video, and I encourage you guys to look for a class and see if there's a class in your area. Here in the States, that's another really good option. If those aren't available, then look for something that focuses on road speed cornering is going to be one of your best options for training in order to explore the options of cornering and your threshold of cornering and maintaining your traction. With cornering, though, we can avoid a lot of bad situations if we just use good technique in cornering. I've got a whole section on our YouTube page, a 4-part video series on cornering, and I'll have a link to that in the description if you hadn't watched that. But practice on that slow look, press, and roll, and you can avoid a lot of bad situations out on the street just by using proper technique. So while I generally have control over how I go through a corner, but just by the way that I ride down the street, what I don't have control over sometimes is how quickly I need to brake. Because things happen out on the street, cars pull out in front of you, things like that will cause you to have to stop quicker at times than others. So one of the greatest things that you can do is practice emergency braking. Now, I recommend in practice that you don't exceed 25 miles per hour. That keeps things at a slow pace where you can still explore the threshold of emergency braking, but you're not getting up your speed so high that you could cause a real problem out there practicing. The last thing you want to do is cause an accident while you're training to increase your braking skills. But by practicing emergency braking, you are retraining or you're developing that muscle memory so that you don't reach out and grab the front brake like we've talked about before, so that you approach that threshold in a smooth manner by applying that slow progressive squeeze to the front brake. I'll have links in this video on our video series on braking to help give you some exercises that you can work on to develop that skill. But that's an important skill to develop, your emergency braking, so that when you're needed out on the street, you don't do what comes naturally in reaching out and grab the brake, but you apply that slow progressive squeeze on the brakes. The field guide also has several braking exercises that you can work on any empty parking lot. So if you're a patron, go to the field guide and look in the braking section of the field guide so that you can have some exercises to work on and braking on your own time. Also, I'm a huge believer in ABS. ABS on a motorcycle saves a lot of bad braking habits or practices. Now, I wish my new Harley Road King had ABS on it. It was an option, but the guy that bought it before me didn't have it on there. But the Tenere has ABS on it, and I'm a huge believer in ABS, and that can save you if you tend to go past the threshold in an emergency situation, or if you're braking and you happen to hit some oil or sand on the roadway, that ABS is going to save the day in that situation. So what did I leave out? Are there any other areas out on the street where you approach the threshold of your traction that I didn't mention? If you think of areas that other folks need to know about, leave a comment in the description. I'd love to hear your thoughts and ideas on it. If you don't have access to the field guide and you want to become a supporter of MCrider, go to mcrider.com/support, where you can learn how to get access to the field guide and help support MCrider and keep videos like this on a weekly basis. Till next week, guys, this is Kevin with MCrider, and we'll see you on the road.